Hi, everyone, and welcome to March and what hopefully will be the start of a beautiful spring wherever you are. Thank you for joining us for this edition of the Stir podcast brought to you by Gazelle Media. I'm your host, Trish Muyco-Tobin, and I am joined by my special co-host, author, entertainment columnist, and sitcom producer, Debbie Baldwin. Hello, Debbie.
Hey, Trish. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Well, guess what came in the mail this week? I am so excited.
Oh my gosh, enjoy. That's so fun to see.
I haven't gotten started yet. I am reserving it for the weekend because, you gotta mix up your binging here and there. You can't just be watching TV or movies all the time. I am so excited about Illicit Intent, which is Debbie Baldwin's follow-up to the highly successful False Front, a romantic thriller. Debbie, I am hearing all sorts of great reviews for this book number 2.
Yeah, it's been overwhelming. I'm so, I've told you many times that book 2 is a real labor of love for me. The sort of historical kernel of truth in where the story grows from is long been a fascination of mine. So it's just really nice to have readers responding to it so positively.
And which is something that I really love about books is you have this little grain of truth that, gets you thinking, really, is that really, and really sends your imagination wild. And so I'm really excited about this. Again, that is Illicit Intent, now available at all online booksellers. So be sure to get yourself a copy. All right, Deb. So we had some fun selecting movies for this week's list, which is all about ensemble comedies and a little madcap adventure film here and there thrown in. So set us up for this must-see list.
Well, as we were sort of culling the herd and trying to come up with 11, we realized, you and I both, how many amazing ensemble comedies there are.
There are a lot.
I've taken away a few that we've discussed a lot in the past. Bridesmaids for one, we talk about all the time. Girls Trip is another one we just talked about. All great ensemble comedies.
Animal House.
And Animal House. I mean, Caddyshack. There's just
right.
The Monty Python comedies.
Some of them are really on a league of their own that could fit any kind of greatest comedy movies of all time.
It was very, very challenging to. So these are sort of standalone comedies, ensemble comedies that I just think are outstanding in their own way. And so there are definitely a lot of other outstanding ones that aren't on this list, but this is our list, and we're going to go with it.
This is a darn good list. It's a pretty diverse list. At least one movie from every decade, beginning in the 1960s, and that's where we are starting. First up with It's a Mad, 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 Mad World from 1963. I had to make sure I had 4 mads because for some reason I thought it was just 3 mads.
It's a mad, 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 mad world.
Correct.
I tell you, this movie, if you have not seen it, is a must see. It is so funny. And it's awesome that we're starting with this one because it sets the tone for what makes a great ensemble comedy is great acting. It's investing in these characters as if, the film were a heavy, weighty, serious film.
Yes.
And this movie could not be less serious about anything. And yet, when you look at the cast list, Spencer Tracy is in it. He's the, a main character of the ensemble of It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Multiple Academy Award winner, one of the greatest actors of his generation. Then you've got Sid Caesar, Milton Berle, Buddy Hackett, Ethel Merman, Mickey Rooney. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Yes.
Just comic geniuses, acting greats.
And those are just the ones that you mentioned are the ones who are top billed. And then you have a second tier of supporting actors. And that's where it gets really funny. I mean, you've got Carl Reiner and you've got Norman Fell and Don Knotts. And
That's Mr. Roper.
yes, for those of you who are fans of Three's Company, you know
Yes.
those names.
You've
You're right.
got Jonathan Winters. You've got, I mean,
Yes.
it's just, it goes on. And then you get the director, Stanley Kramer, who's known for films like Judgment at Nuremberg and
Yes.
Inherit the Wind
More
and Guess Who's
serious
Coming to
films.
Dinner. So you know that they approach this absolutely absurd film where a man is in a terrible car accident and people go down to help him, and he reveals as he's dying that there is $350,000 from a heist buried at, I think it's like the Rosemont Park racetrack under the giant W. Like all I can remember is that
Somewhere
giant
in California.
W.
Yeah.
And these groups of people go on this rat race to try and find this money. And originally they're going to all share it, but of course greed takes over and they're all trying to beat each other to get there.
And the unraveling of all that is what makes this film funny. So you mentioned the amount, which was $350,000, big money back in the day in the 60s. Adjusted for inflation, it's even bigger. It would be worth at least $2.8 million. So definitely worth that crazy, zany treasure hunt that they went through.
6 Academy Award nominations for this crazy film. I mean, we think about movies that kind of are of that same ilk, you know, Rat Race, Brewster's Millions. I mean, there's a lot of them, and none of them really hold a candle to It's a Mad, 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 Mad World.
Right, because comedies in general don't really get taken seriously come award season, but this one definitely was because of the caliber and just, you know, just the physicality of it. It did take home 1 Oscar, and that was for Best Sound Effects. But also I wanted to note, you know, there were a few stunts in this movie and a lot of them really memorable if you've seen the film. Back then, you know, you've got the chase scene and that airport scene. How could you forget that airport scene? Yeah, so there were reportedly only 100 stunt actors working in Hollywood at the time this film was being produced. And 80 of them worked in this movie. So that goes to show how the physicality was very intense for this movie, this comedy.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good little factoid.
Yeah. And so next up is a film from 1972. In fact, it became one of the top grossing films of that year and has consistently ranked among the top 100 American comedies. And this movie is set in the fictional Hotel Bristol in San Francisco. And we are talking about What's Up, Doc?
What's Up, Doc?
Yes.
This movie, in my opinion, is a must-see. It is so funny. It's so relevant. I mean, even today, I mean, if it ever was relevant, it's still relevant. You know, it's as relevant now as it was in the 70s, let's just say.
Yes.
It's the most lighthearted, funny. The premise is simple. It's for all the complexity of the film, 4 identical suitcases, one containing top government secrets, one containing 4 musical rocks for Dr. Howard Bannister to attempt to win some grant money, which is, the character is played by Ryan O'Neal. One containing clothes, and one containing a wealthy woman's diamonds and jewelry. And someone's trying to steal the diamonds, someone's trying to steal the government secrets, and all the bags are getting mixed up throughout the course of this crazy movie. Madeline Kahn, Barbara Streisand, Ryan O'Neal. I'm trying to think.
Randy Quaid. It was an early role for him.
Austin Pendleton. I mean, it's a fabulous ensemble cast of, you know, some of the actors are lesser known, but no less funny. And you know, it just has that wonderful kind of feel of like the Broadway musical Noise is Off, or, you know, someone's coming in one door, someone's going out another door, the robber's crawling under the bed, you know, there's all kinds of action going on. It's just really funny, incredibly well timed, very clever, very charming.
And if you have a premise like that, it's easy to see how really all hell can break loose at any given time.
Right, absolutely. And there's hotel fires and people falling in and out of love, and it's a great movie.
And we all know who Ryan O'Neal is. And if that name is kind of sort of ringing a bell, he is the guy from Love Story, Oliver.
Right.
And I thought that the line from this movie, I didn't
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. And so it was between Ryan O'Neal and Barbara Streisand's characters, and they're talking in the end. And he apologizes to her for some reason, and she says, well, love means never having to say you're sorry, to which O'Neal's character replies, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I know, and it was almost like sacrilege to make fun of Love Story, which is, the definitive romantic movie.
Which makes this such a great movie. Right. The screenplay was wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, so we're moving on, jumping an entire decade to the 1980s with a film that you could argue defined a generation, a film, Debbie, by one of our favorite directors, John Hughes. It tells the story what happened when a jock, a brain, a princess, and a rebel and basket case got together, and that is the movie The Breakfast Club.
And it absolutely, I think, defined a generation. It starred, the core members of the Brat Pack: Ali Sheedy, Molly Ringwald, Judd Nelson, Emilio Estevez, and Anthony Michael Hall, as 5 students, each fitting, one of the stereotypes that you just mentioned: the rebel, the athlete, the brain, the basket case, and the princess. And their all-day detention in their high school and how they sort of peel the onion on their personalities. This is classic John Hughes. Kids who are more adult than child, who come from families that are not perfect.
Not perfect.
And express their pain and their angst in different ways. And it's, just a very definitive 80s film with a great message, I think. And it's, there's a lot of rebellion and stuff you can't imagine happening now. I mean, they get high at one point, I think, during detention. But yeah, it's, it's The Breakfast Club. It's just a great, right up there with, St. Elmo's Fire and 16 Candles and those classic, John Hughes, 80s, Molly Ringwald, Brat Pack films that are so resonate with a certain age group really effectively.
I mean, you and I growing up and coming of age in the 80s, those were our movies. And Debbie, this movie turned 35 years old last year. If you can believe that. It's the movie that gave us the nonsensical term neo-maxi Zune dweeby, if spoken by Judd Nelson's character, as well as that wondrous combination of Captain Crunch and Pixie Sticks in a sandwich. So that was The Breakfast Club for you. I was not aware of the casting musical chairs that happened behind the scenes for
I was waiting for you to bring this up.
Yes. So Molly Ringwald and Anthony Michael Hall, both 16 at the time, were the first ones cast, just coming off 16 Candles with John Hughes, which came out the year prior. The rest of the cast were in their early 20s, Judd Nelson being the eldest at 25. Molly Ringwald apparently wanted the role. Well, no, she wanted the role of Claire, which is what she ended up with. But John Hughes wanted her to be the role that went to Ali Sheedy, the role of Allison. But she was able to convince John Hughes to give her Claire. So I don't know how that would have changed the dynamics of the film.
And then imagine Jodie Foster as Claire, who was reading for that role when Hughes was going to cast Molly Ringwald in the Ali Sheedy role. I mean, what a different film.
Things. And Emilio Estevez auditioned for the role of John Bender, which of course is Judd Nelson's character. That would have been really strange.
Well, and what's interesting is when you think about 16 Candles and Emilio Estevez's brother, Charlie Sheen, playing the criminal rebel in that nice little cameo at the
Right.
end of 16 Candles, you can see, how a casting director's mind would go to Emilio Estevez in that similar role in The
Exactly.
Breakfast Club.
Exactly. And so, even with all of that going on, the biggest shock to me was who eventually ended up in the role of the criminal, John Bender. John Hughes was thinking between, it all went down to Judd Nelson and Debbie John Cusack. Did you know that?
I did not.
So Cusack
But
was
I'm not surprised by that because John Cusack is
right.
a regular in John Hughes films.
Exactly. But so Cusack was initially picked for that role, but John Hughes later changed his mind just before filming began because he apparently started to think, oh, Cusack didn't look threatening enough to be John Bender. So he probably was right. It worked out for everybody. I thought that the cast that they ended up with was the cast.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think John Cusack probably could have pulled that role off, but Judd Nelson is more inherently menacing for sure.
I think so. And apparently he stayed in character through most of the filming, much to the annoyance of Molly Ringwald. But apparently he did. So that must have been the fun times behind the scenes. All right. So our next film comes to us from 1988, and that is A Fish Called Wanda with another stellar cast.
And another must see. This is in my top 10 films of all time. It's one of my
Hilarious.
favorites. It is the funniest movie. So, another heist movie, another ensemble cast. I mean, it's another cast of great actors. You've got this time John Cleese, Michael Palin, are British icons in comedy. It's again a heist. There's stolen diamonds. They're supposed to be in a safe. Someone's moved them. Everyone's betraying everyone behind the scenes. Jamie Lee Curtis and Kevin Kline's character claim to be brother and sister, but they're actually lovers. And I mean, the scenes when Kevin Kline is speaking Italian to Jamie Lee Curtis and she's getting all hot and bothered. From there to Jamie Lee Curtis's character deciding she needs to seduce the barrister who is representing the head of the heist gang, and they end up falling in love. And I mean, it
Crazy.
I can tell you the plot till I'm blue in the face. It does not even begin to scratch the surface of how funny this movie is.
It is hilarious, and they could not have picked a better Otto than Kevin Kline because he was perfect for that role. That you have to balance this, like his character was pretending to be smart when he was the exact opposite, and the way he interpreted that role was just so rich and rewarding for everyone watching that. So yes, he did take home the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. It was nominated for a total of 3 Academy Awards, including Best Director and Screenplay as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I can remember sort of back in my theater days, an acting teacher saying the best way to act drunk is to try and be sober. And the best way to play a character that's not as smart as you are is to try and be smart. It's that, that like people who are dumb aren't, being dumb deliberately, and people who are drunk aren't, doing this deliberately. So it's that Kline's like genius of trying to compensate for his own
I have to agree. I have to agree. Yeah, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful movie. So we're going to move on to 1989, 1 year later, and another all-star cast, and that is the film Major League. And we're talking Tom Berenger, Charlie Sheen, Wesley Snipes, Bob Euchre, Renee Russo, Dennis Haysbert, Corbin Burnson of LA Law. My gosh, again, the list goes on, as with every movie on this list.
And I think, I don't know if I'm right about this or not, but I feel like this is a movie that kind of flew under some people's radar. It doesn't make a lot of people's, top 10 comedy lists or jump to mind when you're thinking of those great, 80s comedies. And it truly is. It is one of the funniest movies. It has the plot of The Producers, which is the owner of this baseball team, which is the Cleveland Indians in the film, wants to move the team to Miami. And the owner can only do that if the attendance for the entire year is lower than a certain number. And so she sets about putting together the worst professional baseball team that she can find. And so she comes up with Charlie Sheen, who I think is an ex-convict, who they call Wild Thing because he can't get a pitch across the plate.
Yes.
And Wesley Snipes, who's fast as lightning, but can't swing the bat and hit the ball. Then you've got Dennis Haysbert, who is the star of the film, in my opinion, as this voodoo worshiping pitcher, and then Berenger as the kind of washed up catcher.
Yes.
And just every moment of this movie is funny, smart, charming. It's one of those movies you watch it 2 or 3 times and you find something funny that you missed the first time.
Oh, I don't know how many times I've seen this movie, but it's hilarious every single time. I was surprised to find, as you said, it was the premise is based on the owner of this team wanting to move the team elsewhere. Rachel Phelps, I think, was the character's name, and she was a former showgirl. And, when her husband died, she inherited the team. I was surprised to find that part of the story was inspired by Georgia Frontier, who, of course, took ownership of the Los Angeles Rams after her husband passed away, and how she was initially perceived by the league in general because she was a woman and she was this, someone's widow. I think the similarities end there, but as you know, Georgia Frontier moved the team to St. Louis, where they went on to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I was surprised to find that there was some, it was kind of cool to find out.
Yeah, a little local connection there.
Yes. And so we are moving on to the 1990s with our next film. This film is a so-called mockumentary set in fictional Blaine, Missouri, brought to you by the brilliant Christopher Guest, who co-wrote the script along with Eugene Levy. Really, when you see those names together, you're in for comedic gold. And we're talking about the film Waiting for Guffman. I'm laughing already.
Every time I think of this movie, a different scene pops in my head and I start laughing all over again. And this is the same ensemble that brought you A Mighty Wind and Best in Show. And a lot of people, I think, would choose Best in Show as their favorite film from this group. Mine is Waiting for Guffman.
I would have to say mine is too.
Christopher Guest plays I'm going to say a man of ambiguous sexual orientation with his wife Bonnie, who no one ever sees.
Yes.
But is his excuse for shopping for women's clothing. He's the director of the local community theater in a tiny town.
Corky St. Clair.
Corky St. Clair. I'm going to start getting off on these little comic threads because I can't stay focused long enough because I keep getting distracted. Like when Corky goes to the local town hall of this tiny town and asks for $100,000 for the budget to put on the local annual show, which is an original musical about the history of tiny Blaine, Missouri, the stool capital of the world. It goes on
Chairs,
and on.
chairs, stools.
We've got Catherine O'Hara, Eugene Levy, Bob Balaban, Larry Miller, Brian Doyle Murray. Who else is in this? Oh, Matt Kessler. I mean,
Oh,
it's
goodness.
his standard group of talented actors. Parker Posey plays the girl who works at the DQ, who's going to be the main female character. And then one of my favorite parts of the film is, you've got the handsome strapping guy who plays the love interest, and his dad like grounds him and he can't be in the play anymore. So Christopher Guest's quirky character takes over.
I think he wanted to all along. He was.
And every scene in this film is priceless. If you have not seen Waiting for Guffman, do not hesitate. Put it on your list. It's hilarious.
And I love that Corky St. Clair's claim to fame was that he was a veteran of off Broadway.
Off. And we haven't even said the plot, which is sort of loosely, it's kind of inspired by Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. The premise is that there is this Broadway producer whose name is Guffman, who's coming to Blaine, Missouri to watch this musical and give them their big break.
Yes, and hopefully be the springboard to bringing this production to Broadway. Yes.
Right. So it's this, big momentous build up to this, with the folding chairs in the school gymnasium. They think this huge Broadway producer's coming. Anyway, it's a great movie.
I would have to say, out of the movies on this list, put this on the top of your list. If you want to laugh, and laughing is so cleansing, this movie is just hilarious from start to finish.
And how seriously they all take each other. I mean, the one woman who's like the granddaughter of the founding Blaine.
Yes.
And says at times she knows what the Kennedys feel like.
They're like the Kennedys of Blaine, Missouri.
It's a great film.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So many hidden lines and gems that, it requires a second viewing just to get everything in.
I mean, we keep saying like, put this one on your list, put this one on your list. I couldn't even order them, like to say like, put Waiting for Guffman on your list, put A Fish Called Wanda on your list. I mean, there's a couple coming up. I'm going to insist.
I know. All right, so we're going to move on, and the next film we're going to land firmly in the 2000s with a 2001 film that's really, I think, one of those perfect movies in my opinion. It has it all. It's a good caper, suspense, lots of crazy characters, pretty people definitely to look at, and definitely brings all the laughs you need, and that is the film Ocean's 11. What an A-list cast.
A doesn't even describe it. It would have been an A-list cast with like half as many people in it.
Right.
Most people know it's a remake of the 1960 film, which also had an A-list cast with Frank Sinatra, Angie Dickinson, Peter Lawford. So then fast forward 41 years to George Clooney in the Sinatra role of Danny Ocean, Julia Roberts, Brad Pitt, Matt Damon. The list goes on and on. Casey Affleck, Don Cheadle, Andy Garcia.
Yeah.
And another heist movie. Are all of these Ensemble Comedies heist movies?
Yes. Well, it's a good way to make use of a good ensemble of actors.
Well, and I have to say, a good heist movie is hard to beat, really. And Ocean's 11 is at the top of the food chain as far as, a lot of these actors, they could have phoned in these performances. This was a slam dunk no matter what. It had a good script. It had a great cast. It's a remake, so it's all written, basically, the plot. And it's the level of talent and the commitment of the actors.
Yeah, that's the thing. Everyone wanted to be in this movie, and these actors, reportedly, all of them worked for less than their usual salaries just to bring the budget down and get this movie made. So you can see that they were really dedicated to producing a good product, and they sure did.
What it would have cost? They paid everyone their bank.
I don't know. My God, I have no idea.
I figure George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts
Like at least 20, 25 mil.
all probably make between 15 and 20 million a film. I mean,
Right, right. And so, to those of you who have seen it, as you know, this film was shot mostly in the Bellagio, where cast and crew had plenty of access, pretty much as much access as they wanted, including security footage from the casino security system. As you know, Deb, it played a key role in the plot of this
right.
movie. And also, they did live in the Bellagio during filming, which is nice. Each of them in separate 7,000 square foot villas. So, and they also did, if you were curious, they did gamble during their downtime. There's some disagreement as to who won the most. Some say it was Damon, some say it was Brad Pitt. But there seems to be agreement that Clooney was not among the winners. There's even a story going around that he reportedly lost 25 hands of blackjack in a row. So
That's hard to do. I mean, statistically.
right. So yeah, but my gosh, what a great film. I'd stop whatever I was doing to see that if it was playing, on cable or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Note to self, wouldn't it be a cool movie to do like Argo meets Ocean's 11 and have a film about a casino? Like you've got I'm not even going to be able to articulate this. You ostensibly making a movie that's set in a casino, but you're really there to rob it.
Okay, write that down. Who can we pitch that to?
Okay.
No, that sounds like fun, because I too enjoyed the plot of Argo and how they were, but then if you combine it with this and those oh my gosh, yeah, I'm all for it.
TM, you heard it here first.
All right. So our next film is a movie that not only features a star-studded ensemble of lead actors, but also the cameos. The cameos is another, slate of actors that could do their own movie. And that is 2004's Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy.
Say the whole title, Trish.
Oh my gosh. I can't even begin to describe. I mean, you already have your lead cast. Will Ferrell, Christina Applegate, Paul Rudd, Steve Carell, and then you have the cameos: Vince Vaughn, Jack Black, Tim Robbins, Ben Stiller, Luke Wilson, Seth Rogen.
And the man who seems to be the common thread running through a lot of these movies, Fred Willard.
Fred Willard.
Such a fantastic comic actor. David Koechner was Champ.
Yeah.
Tim Robbins is the PBS anchor. It's just this movie. I mean, I think everyone's seen it. Everyone knows that the spoof of the 70s newsroom.
Deb, did you know that it really wasn't too much of a stretch for Will Ferrell, because he graduated from University of Southern California with a degree in sports journalism?
I did
So
not know that.
he actually had worked after college as a sports broadcaster, although he reportedly did not enjoy what the job entailed. So maybe the real work involved with it. Good for us, though, because he's Will Ferrell now and we benefit from it. I also thought it interesting that the original script, like you said, it had all these things going on. And when they finally decided that they were going to do what they were going to do with Anchorman, there were some recommendations for the lead roles that weren't the ones that eventually ended up being in the movie. So for instance, you talked about David Koechner, and he was Champ Kind. They had John C. Reilly in mind for that role.
I can see that.
Which would have worked, I think, right? Steve Carell's Rick Tamblyn. They had Chris Parnell in mind. Chris Parnell of SNL fame.
I can also see that.
Yes. Paul Rudd's Brian Fantana, which I think is the most hilarious character. They wanted Ben Stiller initially for that role. Even Ron Livingston of Office Space was considered before the role eventually went to Paul Rudd. So that was interesting casting. It's also interesting that some of these first choices for the lead roles the actors ended up as cameos in the movie.
Yeah. And honestly, everyone is great in that film, and it's perfection. It's so funny. Paul Rudd is not the funniest character in the movie, though. I wonder if Ben Stiller played that role, how it would have turned out differently. But I mean, you can't have all these comic geniuses fighting for comic supremacy. There's got to be.
Right, I think which it would have turned out to be that way because it kind of like as embodied in that duel that they had. They were trying to be as crazy as can be, each one of them. And it was, to have a movie just based on a duel like that, I mean, that would have been too much,
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to move on to 2008, a couple years later, to a movie that featured pretty much, I would think, the same circle of actors. And that is 2008's Tropic Thunder. I don't think that many people saw it, but I would highly recommend it.
And honestly, when I say add this to your list, I would put it at the top. This movie is so funny, and I want to stand up and cheer at the sheer irreverence of it. Because for someone like me who grew up with Blazing Saddles and Mel Brooks and comedians who understood the pushing the envelope and pushing the boundaries. And you watch a movie like Blazing Saddles and think it could never be made today. And sure, I mean, maybe it probably shouldn't be made today. I don't know. It's a different world. And any time you like play with race, religion, sexual orientation, it's a touchy subject. However, comedy is free reign if it's done in the right spirit to really poke fun at all of our idiocy and all of our extreme, any kind of nonsense or cancel culture or whatever you want to talk about, that with a core moral purpose is left intact, but any kind of crazy, you see I'm having trouble even articulating it because I don't want to say the wrong thing, but any sort of cringe behavior or extreme behavior can be satirized, and Tropic Thunder does that in such a brilliant way. I'm like,
and that's the thing, you have to go into this movie thinking that you have to be prepared for what this movie is about. And if you are, you will be rewarded.
And the main, obviously, there are two real hot button issues in this film. The first is that Robert Downey Jr. plays an Australian actor who's, an Academy Award winning actor. First of all, the movie is that these actors are all getting together to film an ensemble drama about Vietnam, a la Platoon. And Robert Downey Jr. plays a character who's a lauded Australian movie star, Academy Award winner, who has had a surgical procedure to darken his skin to play a Black man in the movie. I mean, like already you
can see the absurdity in that already, and that's the way it should be seen, not as an offense to anybody.
And the African American cast member in the film, the actual African American cast member, when he read the script, said he had reservations about that part of it, but then when he saw Robert Downey Jr., his commitment to the character, and
he's supposed to be a method actor, remember?
Right. And the way, like, Robert Downey Jr. is a method actor. The actor he's playing is a method actor playing a Black man. That anyway, it was all comedy, definitely controversial, but in the best way, in the way that spurs conversation and hopefully laughter, definitely laughter. The other real controversial issue in this film is the Ben Stiller character, who's an action star, which makes me laugh because it's sort of the Zoolander thing with Stiller. He likes to, put himself in these in these roles that aren't exactly what you'd picture Ben Stiller playing. This one is sort of like a Bruce Willis action star who's trying to salvage his career after a huge flop of a film named, oh my God, why am I spacing on the name? Simple Jack.
Simple Jack, that's right.
Plays, and this is like tread carefully with all of the terminology here. He plays a mentally challenged young man, sort of like I am the Sean Penn character and I Am Sam.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's effing funny all across the board. I mean, you can get offended if you want, or you can choose to like set all that shit aside and just watch a really freaking funny movie with cameos, Matthew McConaughey, Tom Cruise. I mean, it's unbelievably clever and funny. These ensemble actors get into the what I think they're in Mexico, but it's supposed to be in the Vietnamese.
Yes, it was supposed to be
jungle.
in Vietnam. Uh-huh.
And their director gets killed, and they end up in like a real, unbeknownst to them, they're in a real conflict situation. It's everything about it is hilarious. In my opinion, I love it when films take risks like this, like Borat, cross a line. I'd rather have you go too far and have to pull back than not go far enough with it, because that's what makes things funny.
I agree. I enjoyed this film. Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Kirk Lazarus, the method actor, he had said that he modeled his character after Russell Crowe, Daniel Day-Lewis, and Colin Farrell. And if you do see, you know, the way that he's trying to go about perfecting this role for this movie that they're shooting in the film, it's quite hilarious. And as you said, you know, the cast of characters, we have Jack Black too, Brandon T. Jackson, who is the Black actor who was initially offended that he wasn't offered the role that Robert Downey Jr.'s character got. Nick Nolte, Stephen Coogan, Danny McBride. And, you know, we're not going to ruin the Tom Cruise cameo, but I think it was worth the price of admission just to see Tom Cruise in the movie. The studio and the actor went through great lengths to keep that character a secret until the movie's release as a surprise to his fans. And his fans, you know.
The first time you watch it, you're like, who is that?
You don't know.
You know,
you don't know. I was almost
like Harvey Weinstein, kind of like loud mouth, and he's bald, he's heavy, he's going into the phone, and you're like, who is that? And then of course it's like gorgeous Tom Cruise.
I was almost upset at myself that I missed it the first time, because how could you miss that? But you know, it was that much of a really cool surprise. So yes, the film is Tropic Thunder, and yes, I would recommend that, and Debbie does too. All right, for our next film, we're going to go to 2009, 1 year later, and I think everyone has seen this film, and that is the film The Hangover.
I mean, what can you say? It's the thing I loved about The Hangover, and I cannot believe this film is 12 years old. Can you?
No.
The thing I absolutely loved about it and still love about it is the way it kind of took everyone by surprise. Everyone kind of walked into that theater and thought, well, I maybe get a few laughs and then we'll go get some dinner afterwards. And boom, you're just hit with this clever, funny, out there movie that is another one of those films. You can see it 2 and 3 and 4 times and find new stuff. I mean, the Zach Galifianakis is enough to make you just fall on the floor laughing, and you'll, you know, catch some little line that you missed the first time you saw it when you see it again of his. It's Bradley Cooper, Ed Helms, Zach Galifianakis, and Justin Bartha play 4 friends. Well, 3 friends and a future brother-in-law who are going to Las Vegas for their bachelor party trip. I think most people know the story. They wake up the next morning after their wild night out and they're missing one friend, and no one can seem to remember what happened the night before. And it's basically the entire movie is these 3 guys with the help of other characters and the hindrance of other characters, namely Ken Jeong, who has just this fantastic role
And
as
you've got
this
Heather Graham in this movie too,
Heather Graham as the stripper who
with a heart of gold.
stripper with a heart of gold who they was heavily involved in their encounter that they don't remember. And interestingly enough, I know you know this, Trish, who was offered that role first.
No, I do not know that.
Lindsay Lohan was offered the role of Jade, the stripper,
Oh, wow.
and turned it down, not because of a prior commitment, but because she said the script had zero potential.
Well, we know what happened with that, didn't we? Oh my goodness.
Par for the course of Lindsay Lohan's judgment.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
But yeah, it's a hilarious movie. Every scene. Mike Tyson has a fantastic cameo.
Mike Tyson does. You know, believe it or not, this film was actually based on what happened to a real man named Trip Vinson, who was a friend of one of the executive producers. He had blacked out and gone missing during his bachelor party, apparently in Las Vegas, and woke up in a strip club and was stuck with a very large bill that he was supposed to pay. So really, Las Vegas as a setting makes for a good backdrop for films like this with an ensemble cast. I mean, you know, we talked about Ocean's 11. I mean, Con Air, Casino, all in Las Vegas, all with crazy things going on. And you also mentioned Ken Jeong, who was one of my favorite characters from this movie, along with Alan, who is Zach Galifianakis' character. So Ken Jeong is Mr. Chow. He had to ask for his wife's permission to appear completely naked in the film. And one of the more poignant stories to come out during filming of this movie, you know, Ken Jeong's wife was battling breast cancer during production of this film. And Ken Jeong would tell you during that time, Bradley Cooper would drive him to Los Angeles in between shoots to be with his wife. And I saw an interview with Ken Jeong, and he would later say that, you know, it really got him through the most difficult period of his life. Great news is that Mrs. Jeong was declared cancer-free shortly after filming wrapped up, but it was just a nice little nugget of a slice of life during production for them that, you know, that really was very, very touching.
Yeah, that's a great story. I always love it when actors, you know, when they're like Bradley Cooper and you think, oh, I wonder if he's an asshole in real life. You know, he's so good looking. So it's really nice that there's like touching stories like that come out.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's great to hear. Okay, so our final film on the list is by a director who's known for his ensemble casting. I mean, it is his signature. And we are talking about Wes Anderson. And the film we're talking about is from 2014, probably, Deb, my personal favorite. I don't know about you, but it's The Grand Budapest Hotel.
And I have to say, nothing will unseat the Royal Tenenbaums in my mind for the great Wes Anderson comedies. But The Grand Budapest Hotel is definitely a great Wes Anderson comedy, totally worth seeing with all of his core ensemble actors. I just love that Wes Anderson brings these actors back again and again to work in these different roles, playing, you know, highly varied characters, but always in this quirky, complicated situation. This time it's the story of this Grand Budapest Hotel that at one time was the getaway for royals and the rich and has fallen into disrepair. And it's told in sort of flashback this history of the bellman and concierge and how just this crazy story of this history of this hotel, and the ensemble cast that makes it fit in this category is Ray Fiennes, F. Murray Abraham, Adrian Brody, Owen Wilson, Bill Murray, Willem Dafoe, Jeff Goldblum, Tilda Swinton, Edward
Saoirse Ronan, Ed Norton,
Saoirse Ronan,
Jeff Goldblum, Harvey Keitel, Tom Wilkinson,
Jason Schwartzman, who is in almost all of Wes Anderson's films. I mean, it is and really with a cast that size, every role is very small. It's almost like a series of cameos. But
Yeah.
and Wes Anderson has this wonderfully it's almost like a comic strip come to life on film, the way he directs. And anyway,
I think especially for this movie, and it's no surprise that it won the Oscar for best production design, costume, and
yes,
hair and makeup, because you're right. It was almost like the characters were almost like caricaturish, and in
highly
that
stylized.
setting and
Yeah,
those colors that were popping, that's really signature for him anyway. But
yeah,
I think more so in this movie, in my
yeah.
opinion.
Very, very cool. It's fantastic.
It was nominated for 9 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Director, Screenplay, Cinematography, and again, as I said, one for production design, costume, hair, and makeup, and also Best Score. Also won the Best Film, Musical, or Comedy at the Golden Globes, Best Screenplay for Wes Anderson at the BAFTAs. I mean, so long, the list of accolades for this movie. This is Wes Anderson's highest grossing movie to date. It was the highest grossing independent movie of 2014, perhaps his most acclaimed movie, again, based on the amount of nominations from the Oscars to the BAFTAs, the Golden Globes, the Critics' Choice that it received.
And I mean, honestly, they always ask you, like on college applications or, in job interviews, what three people, who would you like invite to a dinner party if you could have anybody you wanted? Oh my God, Wes Anderson. That guy's mind. I would just like to sit and like listen to him talk for 3 hours.
Do you think though that he is one of those guys where it's hard for him to concentrate on one thing at a time just because of the way his mind works, based on what I see in his movies?
I don't know, but
Almost kind of like a Bill
I think
Murray,
I would
where
enjoy that too.
it would be fascinating to sit down with him though.
Now, I will say, if you want a good laugh and you don't have time to watch an entire movie, go online and watch the Saturday Night Live skit that is called The Midnight Coterie of Sinister Intruders. It is Edward Norton is the host of Saturday Night Live, and it is a spoof on a Wes Anderson film. What would be a Wes Anderson film?
Oh my goodness. Okay, I don't think I've seen that.
Edward Norton plays Owen Wilson as, the father of this family, and there's people outside of their house trying to kill them. And I mean, if you are a fan of Wes Anderson, you will fall on the floor laughing. The Midnight Coterie of Sinister Intruders is the name of Wes Anderson's Halloween horror film.
Oh my God. And I could see Ed Norton really kicking ass on that one.
It's great.
All right. So there you have it. There goes our list for the week. And to go along with your binging this weekend, we present you with our featured treat. Deb, during this pandemic, we've talked about how everyone all of a sudden started making sourdough starter or whipping up Dalgona coffee. Another popular thing to bake during the pandemic was banana bread. And so because we like to kick things up a notch, what we are making is chocolate banana bread. So moist, so chocolatey, not overly sweet at all. It's perfect for breakfast, as a snack, or even a late night treat. So that is what we're making this week.
Awesome. That sounds like something I would definitely eat the entire loaf.
Yes, that's the challenge. It's very simple to make, very basic ingredients, and the result is just, really satisfying. And it's healthy. It's got bananas, So that is all our time for today. Deb and I thank you for joining us, and we cannot wait to see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.